The Dominion Council chamber fell into absolute silence when the transmission ended. For 300 cycles, the Corvani Empire had conquered without equal, spreading across 17 star systems with methodical precision. Their enemies had fallen one by one, the crystalline Velorans shattered, the gas-dwelling Nephrics dispersed, the aquatic Thessari boiled in their own oceans. No species had ever withstood the might of Corvani expansion. But now, Supreme Arbiter Keth Vorn stood before the holographic display, his 4 arms trembling in a way that would have been unthinkable just moments before. The image frozen on the screen showed ships, crude, angular vessels of primitive metal alloys, emerging from something that should not have existed. A stable wormhole, artificially created, bridging a distance that would have taken the fastest Corvani vessel 3 generations to cross. "They have found us," Keth Vorn said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The humans have found us." Around the circular chamber, the 14 members of the Dominion Council shifted uneasily in their suspension fields. These were the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, commanders of fleets that numbered in the thousands, rulers of worlds that had been conquered and subjugated over centuries of expansion. Yet the word human sent visible tremors through their assembled forms. "Perhaps it is a mistake," offered Counselor Yethnari, her secondary eyes blinking rapidly in distress. "The scouts could have misidentified. There is no mistake." Keth Vorn gestured with his lower arms, and the display expanded to show enhanced imagery. The ships were unmistakably of human design, that distinctive blend of efficiency and aggression that had made them legends across every corner of explored space. They bear the markings of the Terran Coalition. Specifically the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, the Deathworlders. The term hung in the air like a death sentence. Deathworlders, the name given to species that evolved on planets so hostile that survival itself was a form of natural selection for violence. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, predators at every turn, toxic atmospheres, geological instability. Earth, the human homeworld, was classified as a Category 12 Deathworld on the Galactic Habitability Index. Nothing above Category 8 had ever produced intelligent life, nothing except humans. "How many ships?" asked Fleet Commander Thorn Vex, already calculating defensive positions in his tactical mind. 47 confirmed vessels, 12 capital ships, the remainder being support and escort craft. Keth Vorn paused, and his next words carried the weight of absolute dread. "They are led by the carrier designated Lincoln." Several counselors made sounds of distress. The Lincoln was a name spoken of in warnings passed between species, a ship that had participated in the liberation of the Mendari Collective, the breaking of the siege of Proxima Station, and most terrifyingly, the complete annihilation of the Krix swarm. 40 billion Krix had threatened to consume an entire galactic arm. The Lincoln and her battle group had ended that threat in 72 hours. "We should negotiate," said Counselor Vethmari, the eldest member of the council. "Offer them tribute. Territory, whatever they demand." "You know what they will demand," Keth Vorn replied coldly. "They always demand the same thing, the liberation of subjugated species, the dissolution of imperial authority, the trial of leadership for crimes against sapient beings." He turned to face the council fully. "They will demand our destruction." "Then we fight," Thorn Vex declared. "We have superior numbers. Our fleet outnumbers theirs 20 to 1. Our weapons are more advanced." "Are they?" Keth Vorn interrupted. "Have you studied the combat records from the Krix swarm engagement? Have you analyzed what happened to the hegemony of Vex when they attempted to contest human expansion into the Perseus arm?" He manipulated the display again, bringing up tactical footage that had been classified at the highest levels of Corvani intelligence. "Watch. Watch what happens when our kind face theirs." The footage showed a battle, though calling it a battle was generous. Corvani vessels, sleek and elegant with their bio-organic hulls and phase-shifting shields, engaged a human strike force less than a quarter their size. The outcome should have been predetermined. Instead, the council watched in horrified fascination as the human ships executed maneuvers that should have been physically impossible, enduring acceleration forces that would have liquefied any Corvani crew, absorbing damage that would have crippled any vessel of similar tonnage. Their bodies, Kethvorn explained, are built for a gravity nearly 3 times our standard. Their bones are dense enough to survive impacts that would shatter our exoskeletons. Their muscles can exert forces that our strongest warriors could never match. And their minds, he paused, struggling to find words adequate to the horror. Their minds evolved to survive constant threat. They think faster under pressure. They become more effective when they should be paralyzed by fear. The tactical footage continued, showing a human marine boarding action. Corvani soldiers, elite warriors trained from hatching for combat, fell in seconds to beings half their size. The humans moved with a fluid efficiency that spoke of countless generations of predator evolution, their reflexes operating at speeds the Corvani nervous system simply could not match. "We cannot defeat them in open combat," Kethvorn concluded. "Our only hope was that they would never find us, that we could complete our expansion before word reached their territory. That hope is now gone." Aboard the Lincoln, Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the observation deck, watching the stars stream past as her fleet moved into position. She was 53 years old, with gray threading through her brown hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many battles, too many decisions that had cost lives. Behind her, the soft hum of the ship's systems provided a constant backdrop to her thoughts. "Admiral." Commander Daniel Harrison approached, his boots clicking against the deck plating. He was young for his rank, barely 30, but he had proven himself in the Crix campaign and earned his position through merit rather than politics. "We have a response from the Corvani. They want to negotiate." "Of course they do." Cole did not turn from the viewport. "They always want to negotiate once they realize they cannot win. Show me the terms." Harrison handed her a tablet displaying the translated message. Cole read it quickly, her expression unchanging. Territorial concessions, trade agreements, a formal alliance against, quote, "common threats," unquote. She set the tablet aside. No mention of the species they have enslaved, no reference to the billions they have murdered in their expansion. "They seem to believe we can be bought," Harrison observed. "They do not understand us." Cole finally turned, and there was something cold in her eyes, not cruelty, but an absolute resolve that had carried humanity through every challenge they had ever faced. "They think we are like them, that we conquer for resources, for territory, for power. They cannot comprehend that we might fight for something else entirely." She moved to the tactical display that dominated the center of the observation deck. "Show me the disposition of the Corvani fleet." The hologram sprang to life, displaying nearly 1,000 vessels arranged in defensive formations around the Corvani homeworld. Orbital defense platforms bristled with weapons, and construction yards worked frantically to produce more ships. 947 combat vessels, Harrison reported, plus approximately 300 support craft and an unknown number of defense stations. Their fleet significantly outnumbers ours. Cole studied the display for a long moment. "What is the status of Operation Deliverance?" "All assault teams are ready. The Mendari volunteers have provided updated intelligence on the slave processing facilities. We have identified 17 priority targets across the Corvani system." "And the civilian population?" Harrison hesitated. This was always the hardest part of human warfare, the acknowledgement that even enemies were composed of individuals, families, children who had no say in the policies of their leaders. "Corvani civilians have been advised to evacuate combat zones. We have broadcasting the warnings on all frequencies for the past 6 hours. Compliance has been minimal." "They think it is a trick," Cole nodded slowly. "They cannot imagine that we would warn them, that we would give them the opportunity to remove themselves from danger. Should we delay the operation?" "No." The word was soft but absolute. "Every hour we delay is another hour that billions of enslaved beings suffer in Corvani processing facilities. Every day we wait is another day that the Corvani exterminate populations they deem unworthy of subjugation." Cole turned back to the viewport. "We warned them. That is more than they ever offered their victims." She straightened, and when she spoke again, her voice carried across the observation deck with the weight of command. "Signal all vessels. Operation Deliverance commences in 4 hours. All personnel to battle stations." The first phase of the battle did not go as the Corvani expected. Their admirals had studied human tactics, had prepared for the aggressive frontal assaults that characterized most human engagements. Instead, the human fleet held position at the edge of the system, seemingly content to wait. "What are they doing?" Fleet Commander Thorn Vex demanded, watching the tactical display in the command center of his flagship. "Why do they not attack?" "Unknown, Commander," his tactical officer replied. "Their fleet is holding in standard formation. No movement detected. They are waiting for something." Thorn Vex felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "But what?" The answer came 40 minutes later, when sensors detected massive energy signatures blooming throughout the inner system. Not ships, something else entirely. Wormholes, hundreds of them, tearing open in carefully calculated positions. "They have more ships," Thorn Vex realized with dawning horror. "They sent a fleet through our front door to hold our attention while—" "Commander," the tactical officer's voice cracked with fear. "New contacts emerging from wormholes. Count is—" "Commander, the count is over 600 vessels. They are appearing directly within our defensive perimeter." The Second Fleet had arrived, a massive force that had been positioned months in advance, waiting in the void between stars for this exact moment. While the Corvani had focused their attention on the obvious threat, humanity had been preparing a knife for their back. Aboard one of those emerging vessels, the assault carrier Resolute, Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos was already moving. Her Marine company was the tip of the spear, one of 50 such units tasked with the most dangerous missions of the operation, direct insertion into Corvani slave processing facilities. "All units, final check," Santos called out over the squad channel. "We hit Atmo in 8 minutes. Around her, 60 Marines in full combat suits ran through their equipment one last time. Their armor was black as the void, designed for operations in environments that would kill most species instantly. Each suit was a self-contained environment, capable of sustaining its wearer through vacuum, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and crushing gravity. The weapons they carried were equally impressive. Magnetic accelerator rifles that could punch through starship armor, plasma grenades that burned at the temperature of a stellar corona, monofilament blades that could cut through nearly any material. "Commander," Sergeant First Class Benjamin Turner approached, his helmet tucked under one arm. He was a big man, even by human standards, with the kind of calm demeanor that came from having survived situations that would break lesser soldiers. "Word from intelligence. The facility we are hitting holds approximately 40,000 Mendari prisoners. Current processing rate is about 200 per hour." Santos did the math in her head. "So every hour we delay costs 200 lives." "Yes, ma'am." "Then let's not delay." Santos sealed her helmet and felt the suit pressurize around her. The heads-up display activated, feeding her tactical data from the assault carrier's sensors. "All units mount up. We are going to give those prisoners something to believe in." The drop pods launched 7 minutes later, screaming through the atmosphere of the Corvani colony world like metallic meteors. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, energy beams and kinetic projectiles reaching up to swat the invaders from existence. The Corvani defenses were formidable, designed to repel exactly this kind of assault. They had been designed to repel normal species. The human drop pods were armored beyond anything the Corvani had anticipated. Direct hits that should have vaporized them merely scarred the ablative plating. The pods jinked and weaved through the defensive fire, their human pilots pulling maneuvers at G-forces that would have rendered any Corvani unconscious or dead. Santos felt the crushing weight of deceleration as her pod fired its retro thrusters. The impact was brutal, a bone-jarring collision that sent vibrations through every cell of her body. A Corvani would have been pulverized by the forces involved. Santos was merely uncomfortable. The pod's hatches blew open and she was moving before the smoke cleared. Her rifle was up, her suit's sensors painting targets in her vision. 3 Corvani guards were already converging on her position, their weapons tracking toward her. She killed all 3 before they could fire a single shot. "First squad on me," she ordered, sprinting toward the massive structure of the processing facility. More pods were landing around her, disgorging Marines who immediately moved to secure the perimeter. Second squad, take the north entrance. Third squad, you have the south. Fourth squad, hold the landing zone for extraction. The facility loomed before them, a brutal structure of gray metal and harsh angles. From inside came sounds that Santos had heard in countless briefings, the screams of beings subjected to the Corvani processing that turned free sapients into compliant slaves. Chemical treatments, neural modifications, systematic torture designed to break the will and reshape the mind. Contact front, Sergeant Turner's voice came over the comm. Heavy resistance at the main entrance. Looks like they are trying to seal the facility. They will not succeed. Santos pulled a breaching charge from her equipment belt. All units prepare for dynamic entry. We go in hard and fast. Primary objective is the prisoners. Secondary objective is the facility's data cores. Tertiary objective is the complete destruction of this place. The breaching charge detonated, blowing a hole in the facility's wall large enough to drive a vehicle through. Santos was through it before the debris stopped falling, her Marines flowing in behind her like water through a broken dam. What followed was not a battle. It was a hurricane of violence compressed into minutes. The Corvani guards, despite their training and equipment, were hopelessly outmatched. They moved too slowly, reacted too sluggishly, fired too late. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once, their movements a blur of lethal efficiency. Santos found herself in the main processing chamber, a vast hall filled with restraint devices and chemical injection systems. Hundreds of Mendari, delicate, furred beings with large, dark eyes, hung suspended in containment fields, their bodies marked with the wounds of repeated treatments. "Turner, get these people down," she ordered. "Everyone who is ambulatory moves to the extraction point. Those who cannot walk, we carry." "Commander," one of her Marines, Corporal Amy Reese, approached with a young Mendari cradled in her arms. The alien was barely conscious, her body covered in partially healed wounds. "She wants to say something." Santos knelt beside them, her helmet visor retracting so the Mendari could see her face. "I am Lieutenant Commander Santos of the Terran Coalition Marines. You are safe now." The Mendari's eyes focused on her with visible effort. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper filtered through the suit's translation systems. "We prayed, for so long, that someone would come. They told us. No one was coming, that the galaxy had forgotten us." "The galaxy may have forgotten," Santos replied, her voice gentle in a way that seemed at odds with the warrior she had been moments before. "But we never forget, and we never stop coming." In orbit above the Corvani homeworld, the battle had reached its climax. The first human fleet, which had seemed content to wait at the system's edge, had finally moved, not in a direct assault, but in a complex series of maneuvers designed to divide and isolate the Corvani defensive forces. Admiral Cole watched from the Lincoln's command center as her battle plan unfolded. The holographic display showed the engagement in real time, human vessels dancing through the Corvani formation with a precision that bordered on prescience. "The enemy fleet is fragmenting," Commander Harrison reported. "Their command structure is breaking down. We are receiving surrender signals from 17 vessels. Accept surrenders from any vessel that powers down weapons and opens their holds for inspection," Cole ordered. "Any ship that continues to fight or attempts to flee toward civilian population centers is to be destroyed." "Understood, Admiral." Harrison paused, listening to something on his earpiece. "Ma'am, we are receiving a transmission from the Corvani Supreme Arbiter. He wishes to discuss terms." "Put him through." The image of Keth Vorn appeared on the main display. He looked diminished somehow, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides, his primary eyes dim with exhaustion. "Admiral Cole, I request an immediate ceasefire to discuss the possibility of a negotiated settlement. Your fleet is being systematically destroyed, Arbiter. Your defensive positions have been neutralized. Our ground forces are liberating your slave processing facilities as we speak. What exactly do you have to negotiate with?" Keth Vorn seemed to struggle with his response. We have hostages, billions of subjugated beings throughout our territory. If you press this attack, we will order their immediate termination." Cole's expression did not change, but something in her eyes went very cold. "You would murder billions of innocent beings to save yourselves. We would do what is necessary for the survival of our species. Surely you understand that calculus, Admiral. Surely you can comprehend the lengths to which any species would go to preserve itself." For a long moment, Cole said nothing. Then she leaned forward, and when she spoke, her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Let me explain something to you, Arbiter. Something your species has clearly never understood about mine." She gestured, and the display shifted to show a planet, not one of the Corvani colonies, but a small world on the opposite side of their territory. "This is Mendari Prime, the homeworld of the species you have spent 3 decades systematically enslaving and processing. 2 hours ago, before we ever engaged your fleet, we inserted special operations teams to every major Corvani population center with subjugated populations. We have been evacuating those populations for the past 120 minutes. Kethvorn's primary eyes widened. That is impossible. We would have detected. You detected nothing because you never thought to look. You assumed we would make the same calculations you would, sacrifice the few to threaten the many. But we are not you, Arbiter." Cole stood, and her presence seemed to fill the screen. "We do not accept the logic of hostage situations. We do not negotiate with those who threaten the innocent. We come for every single person you have taken, and we will not stop until every one of them is free. You cannot possibly watch us." Cole cut the transmission. The battle continued for another 6 hours, but its outcome had been decided the moment the human fleet emerged from those carefully positioned wormholes. The Corvani fought with the desperation of beings who knew their civilization was ending, but desperation was no match for the cold efficiency of human warfare. By the time the last Corvani vessel either surrendered or was destroyed, the liberation operations were nearly complete. Across 17 star systems, human Marines had stormed processing facilities, liberated detention centers, and provided medical care to beings who had lost all hope of rescue. Lieutenant Commander Santos stood in the main plaza of the facility she had helped liberate, watching as medical ships descended to evacuate the freed prisoners. The Mendari who could walk helped those who could not, forming long lines that moved toward the rescue vessels with a quiet dignity that brought tears to more than one Marine's eyes. "Commander," Sergeant Turner approached, his armor scorched and dented from the fighting. "Final count from this facility, 37,412 Mendari rescued. We lost 6 Marines, 17 wounded." Santos nodded slowly, the weight of those 6 lives settling on her shoulders as it always did. "Names." Private First Class George Miller, Corporal Linda Vance, Specialist Kevin Brooks, Staff Sergeant Patricia Gray, Sergeant First Class Howard Flynn, and Corporal Christina West. Santos repeated each name silently, committing them to memory. She would write personal letters to their families, as she always did. She would ensure their sacrifices were never forgotten. "They died well," she said finally. "They died saving 37,000 lives. I cannot think of a better end for a Marine." A commotion near the evacuation line drew her attention. A group of Mendari had stopped, turning back toward the human Marines with expressions of wonder on their alien faces. One of them, an elder male whose fur had gone gray with age, stepped forward. "We have heard stories," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "Stories of beings from a world of death. Deathworlders, they called you. Monsters from a planet so hostile that nothing should have survived there." Santos said nothing, waiting for the elder to continue. "The Corvani told us you were savages, brutal, violent creatures who knew nothing but war. They told us that if you ever came, you would be worse than them." The elder's large, dark eyes met Santos's human ones. "They were wrong about everything except this. You are indeed from a world of death. But what they did not understand, what they could never understand, is that death makes you cherish life, struggle makes you treasure peace, and hardship." His voice broke with emotion. "Hardship makes you fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." He performed what Santos recognized as a Mendari gesture of deepest respect, a lowering of the head that exposed the vulnerable throat, a sign of absolute trust. Around him, thousands of other Mendari did the same. "Thank you," the elder whispered. "Thank you for coming." Santos felt something tighten in her chest, that peculiar mixture of pride and humility that came with moments like this. "We will always come," she replied. "That is who we are." Aboard the Lincoln, Admiral Cole received the final reports with a mixture of satisfaction and weariness. The Corvani Empire had effectively ceased to exist. Their military was destroyed, their leadership in custody awaiting trial, their slave systems dismantled. Over 9 billion enslaved beings across 17 star systems had been liberated in the single largest humanitarian operation in human history. The cost had been significant. 347 human vessels destroyed or disabled, nearly 20,000 military personnel dead or wounded, resources expended that would take years to replenish. And yet, as Cole looked at the images streaming in from liberated worlds, beings of a dozen species embracing their freedom, children seeing their first sky without guards watching over them, families reunited after years of separation, she knew the cost had been worth every life, every ship, every resource. "Admiral," Commander Harrison entered her ready room, a tablet in hand. "We are receiving messages from across the galaxy. News of the operation has spread faster than we anticipated." "What kind of messages?" "All kinds, ma'am. The Velorans are requesting formal diplomatic relations. The Thessari want to discuss mutual defense treaties. And," Harrison paused, consulting his tablet, "we have received over 17,000 individual messages from species and worlds across known space. Some are thanking us, some are warning us about other threats that need to be addressed, and some are," he looked up with a strange expression, "some are asking us for help." Cole leaned back in her chair. "Of course they are. Some of our allies are concerned. They worry that we are taking on too much, spreading ourselves too thin, that eventually we will encounter something we cannot defeat. They may be right." Cole stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. "But that does not change who we are, Commander. Human history is a chronicle of doing the impossible because it needed to be done. We have faced extinction more times than we can count. Ice ages, plagues, wars, asteroid impacts, our own stupidity and cruelty. Each time we found a way to survive and grow stronger. And now we take that strength and use it for something beyond mere survival." Cole turned to face her second in command. "The galaxy is full of species who needed someone to stand up for them, species who were conquered because they evolved on gentle worlds, who never developed the capacity for violence that seems to come so naturally to us. We can use our curse to be their blessing. It is a heavy burden, Admiral." "Yes, but it is one we were born to carry." Cole smiled, a rare expression that softened the hard lines of her face. "Set course for home, Commander. Our people need rest and resupply. But tell the analysts to begin processing those help requests. We have a lot of work to do." In the former Corvani slave processing facility, now converted to a medical and humanitarian center, Lieutenant Commander Santos sat beside a Mendari child who had been separated from her family 3 years ago. The child was 7 years old by human standards, barely more than an infant by Mendari reckoning, and she had spent half her conscious life in captivity. "What is your name?" Santos asked gently, her translator rendering the words into the soft tonal language of the Mendari. "They took my name," the child replied, her large eyes fixed on Santos's face with a mixture of fear and fascination. "They gave me a number instead." "Then what would you like to be called? You can choose any name you want." The child thought for a long moment. Then, hesitantly, she spoke a word in her native tongue that the translator rendered as Dawn. "That is a beautiful name," Santos said. "Why did you choose it?" "Because that is what you brought us," Dawn replied. "When you came through the walls, when you stopped the machines and freed us from the bindings. It was like the first light after a very long night." Her small hand reached out, and Santos let the child take her fingers, though she was careful to be gentle, knowing that her human grip could easily crush the delicate Mendari bones. "You are the Dawn, and I want to remember that." Santos felt tears prick at her eyes, an embarrassingly human reaction that she did not try to hide. "We found records of your family, Dawn. Your parents are alive. They are on one of the evacuation ships. We are bringing them here." The expression of pure, unfiltered joy that spread across the child's face was worth every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every bullet and blade and blood-soaked battle that had brought them to this moment. "Thank you," Dawn whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Santos stayed with her until her parents arrived, Two adult Mindari who had clearly suffered their own trials but who fell upon their child with a ferocious tenderness that transcended species. As the family embraced, Santos stepped back, giving them privacy. Sergeant Turner was waiting for her outside the medical ward. "Commander, we have new orders. Fleet is recalling us for refit and shore leave." "How long?" 6 weeks, maybe 8, after that," Turner shrugged. "Apparently there is a situation in the Cygnus Arm, another empire that has been doing things that humanity cannot tolerate." Santos nodded slowly. "Then we rest, refit, and go back to work." "Permission to speak freely, Commander." "Always." Turner was quiet for a moment, watching the reunion through the medical ward's window. "I used to wonder why we did this, why we spent so much blood and treasure fighting for species who cannot help us, who may never be able to repay what we have given. It seemed wasteful from a purely practical standpoint. And now I understand." Turner's voice was soft. "We do it because we can. Because somewhere in our evolutionary history we became capable of looking at someone different from us, someone from another world, another biology, another way of thinking, and deciding that their suffering matters, that their freedom is worth fighting for, that their children deserve to grow up without chains." He turned to face Santos, and there was something profound in his eyes. "The galaxy calls us Deathworlders because we come from a planet that should have killed us. They are afraid of us because we survived things that would have destroyed any other species, but they are missing the point, which is, we did not just survive our Deathworld, Commander. We learned to love it. We found beauty in its dangers, meaning in its struggles, joy in its challenges. And now we are trying to share that with the rest of the universe. The idea that even in the darkest places, even in the most hostile conditions, life can find a way not just to survive, but to thrive." Santos considered his words for a long time. Then she looked back at the family in the medical ward, the parents holding their child, the child named Dawn who had chosen to remember the moment of her liberation. "Come on, Sergeant," she said finally. "We have a ship to catch. And after that, we have more dawns to bring." As the human fleet departed the former Corvani space, the message spread across the galaxy at the speed of thought. Species who had lived in fear for generations began to hope. Empires who had thought themselves secure began to worry. And everywhere, beings of every shape and size looked up at the stars and wondered if today would be the day that the Deathworlders came for them. For those who held others in chains, it was a nightmare beyond imagining. The knowledge that somewhere out there, a species existed that would cross any distance, fight any battle, sacrifice anything to set their prisoners free. For those who suffered under the yoke of tyranny, it was something else entirely. It was the first real hope many of them had ever known. The hope that no matter how dark things became, no matter how powerful their oppressors seemed, there were beings in the universe who would come for them. Beings from a world of death who had learned that the most precious thing in existence was life. Deathworlders they called themselves, humans, and they would never stop coming. The end.